If your perennials keep suddenly wilting, turning to mush, and dying back year after year, it is time to stop blaming the weather, bad soil, or bad luck. The honest truth is that you might be accidentally killing them with your own hands. The worst part is that these mistakes are so common. Almost every gardener makes at least one of them without even realizing the damage, until it is too late. Today, we are exposing the 5 fatal mistakes that trigger crown rot and destroy your prized garden perennials virtually overnight. Crown rot is one of the most frustrating things you can run into in the garden because it often strikes your healthiest, most vigorous plants without any obvious warning. You walk out to your flower beds in the morning, and a hosta, coneflower, or lavender plant that looked stunning yesterday is suddenly slumped over and completely collapsed at the base. To understand why this happens, you need to understand what the plant crown actually is. The crown is that critical junction, right at the soil line, where the stems and leaves meet the root system. Think of it as the central control room and the vital breathing space of your perennial. It is packed with sensitive growth points and vascular pathways that move moisture and nutrients throughout the entire plant. When dangerous, soil-borne fungal pathogens get the upper hand, they target this exact spot. Instead of attacking the deep roots first, or moving slowly up the stems, the fungus attacks the central hub. It turns the tissue into soft, rotting mush, shutting down the plant's plumbing. In a matter of hours, the stems pull out of the ground with zero resistance, and by that point, the damage is already irreversible. The frustrating part is that these fungi exist naturally in almost every garden soil. They only become lethal when we create the exact environmental conditions they need to take over. The great news is that crown rot is almost entirely preventable. Once you recognize the subtle routines that cause it, you do not need expensive fungicides, complicated soil chemistry, or years of professional landscaping experience to keep your plants safe. By the end of this video, you will know the 5 critical mistakes that trigger these sudden plant collapses, along with simple, actionable adjustments you can make in your garden beds right away to make your perennials virtually bulletproof. If you want healthy, thriving plants, bigger blooms, and fewer lost perennials every season, without wasting extra time or money, hit that subscribe button right now and turn on notifications so you never miss another practical gardening guide. Let's kick off our countdown with mistake number 5, a habit most gardeners do with the best intentions. Mistake number 5 is what professional horticulturists call the mulch volcano, and it is easily one of the most common ways gardeners accidentally smother their plants. We all know mulch is fantastic for the garden. It suppresses weeds, locks in ground moisture, and regulates soil temperature during intense summer heat. So the natural instinct is to spread a thick, generous blanket across the entire bed, packing it tightly right up against the base of every perennial. Here is what actually happens beneath that layer. Organic mulches like shredded bark, wood chips, and decaying compost hold water like a dense sponge. When you push that wet, organic material directly against the living stems and the central crown of your perennial, you strip away its access to fresh air. Without oxygen, the crown tissue softens, weakens, and stays constantly saturated. This creates the exact dark, humid, oxygen-deprived environment where deadly fungal pathogens like rhizoctonia and sclerotium thrive. Within just a few days of heavy rain or routine watering, those fungal spores penetrate the softened bark and outer tissue of the crown, starting the rot process before you notice a single yellow leaf. The practical fix is simple, and you can do it this afternoon. In 5 minutes, keep applying your 2 to 3 inch layer of mulch across the garden bed to protect the root zone, but always leave a clear 2 to 3 inch buffer zone completely bare around the base of the plant. Think of it as creating a small mulch donut, rather than a mulch volcano. By pulling that mulch back just a couple of inches, you allow sunlight and airflow to circulate around the crown, keeping the sensitive tissue dry and fully protected against fungal invasion. While keeping your mulch at a safe distance is critical, how deep you set that crown in the soil to begin with matters just as much. Which brings us directly to mistake number 4. Mistake number 4 is planting your perennials too deep, often called the hidden burial. When bringing home fresh perennials from the garden nursery, the natural instinct is to dig a deep, generous hole. Many gardeners make the mistake of setting the root ball down a little deeper than the original pot level, believing that burying extra stem tissue will help anchor the plant, protect it from heavy winds, or keep the roots cooler in hot summer weather. However, perennials are fundamentally different from plants like tomatoes, which can readily produce adventitious roots all along buried stems. When you bury a perennial's crown, even 1 to 2 inches beneath the soil surface, you place tender tissue in a zone devoid of light and proper airflow. Soil particles pack tightly against the crown, trapping continuous ground moisture against soft bark and leaf petioles. This suffocates the plant's active growth buds and creates an easy point of entry for soil-borne pathogens like Phytophthora and Pythium. The subterranean tissue rots away silently, and by the time top growth wilts, the entire crown connection is severed. The practical solution is to follow the natural soil line rule every single time you plant. When you place your perennial into the planting hole, make sure the top of the root ball sits perfectly level with, or even slightly higher than, the surrounding native soil grade. For plants especially sensitive to rot, such as lavender, coneflowers, and hostas, setting the crown roughly a ½ inch above the surrounding grade creates a gentle slope that directs excess water away from the stem base. Once your plants are positioned at the correct depth, how and when you apply water becomes the next critical factor in keeping rot at bay. Take a moment right now and think about your own garden beds. Have you ever had a specific perennial that looked incredible one day and completely rotted away the next? Drop the name of that plant in the comments below, because sharing your experiences helps other gardeners avoid the exact same heartbreak. Now that we have covered how physical placement and mulching can trap moisture around your crowns, let's dive into the daily routines that quietly invite fungal spores to multiply. Starting with how most gardeners time their watering. Mistake number 3 is overhead evening watering, often called the overnight fungal trap. After a long, warm day in the garden, it feels natural to grab the hose or turn on the sprinklers right around sunset to give tired perennials a generous drink. The cooler evening air means less water evaporates, which seems like an efficient way to hydrate your plants. The danger lies in what happens to the crown while you sleep. When you shower water directly over the top of your perennials late in the day, moisture pools in the dense foliage, crevices, and center of the crown. Without warm daytime temperatures and sunlight to drive evaporation, those drops sit stagnant on the plant tissue for 8 to 10 hours in complete darkness. Fungal spores require continuous standing moisture and moderate temperatures to germinate and penetrate plant cells. Leaving the crown soaking wet throughout the night is an open invitation for crown rot pathogens to colonize the base of the plant before morning light ever arrives. The solution is all about timing and direction. Always shift your watering schedule to the early morning hours, ideally between sunrise and mid-morning. Morning watering gives the soil ample time to absorb deep moisture, while the rising sun and daytime breeze quickly dry off any stray droplets on the crown and foliage. Whenever possible, apply water directly to the soil at the base of the plant using a soaker hose, drip irrigation, or a watering one directed underneath the foliage. Keeping the crown dry while hydrating the root zone is one of the most effective habits you can build. Even with flawless watering habits, the physical texture of the ground itself can still trap dangerous moisture, which leads us straight into mistake number 2. Mistake number 2 is planting in heavy, compacting clay without proper drainage, often known as the clay bathtub effect. Heavy clay soil is packed with vital nutrients, but its microscopic particles bind tightly together, leaving almost zero pore space for air. When you dig a standard planting hole in dense clay, amend only the soil inside that small pocket, and drop your perennial in, you inadvertently create a sunken underground bowl. During heavy rainfall or deep watering, water easily passes through the loose amended potting mix around the plant, hits the dense and yielding clay walls of the hole, and stops dead. Water cannot drain away quickly enough, backing up into the planting pocket and turning the entire root zone into a stagnant, saturated pool. When plant crowns sit submerged in standing groundwater for more than 24 to 48 hours, the cells literally drown from a total lack of oxygen. As the cells suffocate and die, opportunistic water mold pathogens like phytophthora rapidly multiply, invading the vulnerable crown tissue and dissolving the structural integrity of the plant from the bottom up. The practical fix requires improving drainage across the entire bed or raising the planting level rather than creating isolated pockets. If you garden in heavy clay, incorporate coarse organic matter like well-aged compost or pine fines across the entire planting area to gradually loosen the soil structure. An even faster, more reliable solution is to create raised planting mounds or berms that lift your perennial crowns 4 to 6 inches above the native clay grade. This allows gravity to pull excess water down and away from the critical crown zone, ensuring healthy root respiration even after days of relentless downpours. Now, let us uncover the single biggest mistake that gardeners make: a well-intentioned feeding habit that softens your perennials and leaves them completely defenseless against fungal attacks. The biggest and most destructive mistake in perennial care is overfeeding with high-nitrogen synthetic fertilizers, especially in early spring or late summer. When gardeners see sluggish growth or want rapid, massive flowering, the default move is reaching for a heavy dose of concentrated, water-soluble plant food. High nitrogen provides an immediate jolt, producing a surge of lush, deep green growth within days. Here is why this backfires terribly at the crown level. Heavy nitrogen forces plant cells to elongate and divide at an unnatural speed. Instead of building thick, lignified, sturdy cell walls with strong natural defenses, the plant produces soft, watery, bloated tissue right at the soil line. This tender, succulent crown tissue has virtually no physical resistance. For soil-borne fungi like botrytis, fusarium, and sclerotinia, this tender growth is an open feast. The fungal hyphae penetrate the fragile cellular walls with minimal effort, rapidly rotting the crown from the inside out before the plant can mount an immune response. Late summer feedings are especially dangerous, as they prevent the crown from hardening off properly before freezing weather, leaving split, moisture-damaged tissues ripe for winter rot. The solution is to switch from fast-acting synthetic nitrogen to slow-release, balanced nutrition. Feed your perennials with a gentle top dressing of finished organic compost or a balanced, slow-release organic granular fertilizer in spring. These feed the soil microbiome gradually, promoting thick, resilient vascular tissues and sturdy crown development that naturally resist fungal penetration. Protecting your perennials from sudden crown rot comes down to 5 straightforward, highly effective rules you can apply immediately. Pull mulch back 2 to 3 inches from the central stems to prevent suffocating moisture buildup. Plant perennials level with or slightly above the native soil line to keep the crown well aerated. Water early in the morning and aim directly at the soil to keep overnight foliage and crowns completely dry. Ensure positive drainage in heavy clay beds by building mounds or broad amended areas rather than isolated holes. Avoid heavy, fast-release nitrogen that forces soft, disease-prone crown tissue, opting instead for slow-release organic nutrition. With these simple adjustments, your perennials will build tough, resilient root systems that return bigger, healthier, and more vibrant every single season. Take a walk out into your garden today. Check the base of your plants and give those crowns the breathing room they need to flourish. If you found this guide helpful, hit the like button, subscribe for more practical, high-impact gardening advice, and check out the next video on screen to keep your garden thriving year-round.